Hey everyone, welcome back to the Haunted Corner. I'm Ashton, and today I'm back with a few different cold cases from the state of Washington. There are over 3,000 unsolved homicides in the state just since 1965 alone, and over 600 active missing person cases. Today we're discussing just a few of them. As always, if you have any information regarding any of the cases we discussed today, please utilize the contact information that is listed in the show notes. It's also listed on the blog post for the episode. No information that you might have is too small. Let's get into it. Up first, we're heading back to the year 2000 to discuss the disappearance of a woman named Sharon Anderson. Sharon, who went by Shari, lived in Stanwood, Washington, just north of Seattle. Shari had been married to her husband, John, for about 6 years. She had 2 adult children and 2 grandsons who were her world. She was also really close with a woman named Mary Reberg. The two were so close, it was like they were sisters. They talked on the phone every night before bed. Shari worked as a social worker at the Department of Social and Health Services and loved to ride motorcycles with her husband, John, in her free time. On December 2nd, 2000, around 9 o'clock a.m., Shari kissed her husband goodbye and left to go Christmas shopping. She told John she would be home by 4:30 that afternoon, in time for them to go to Seattle for dinner and a motorcycle show as they had planned. Shari left the house in her new Toyota 4Runner with just her purse and her coat. She ran a few errands around town, going first to McDonald's, then to Fred Meyer and Walmart, and then finally to the Everett Mall, which was about 30 miles away. Shari was normally a very reliable and communicative person. If she was going to be late, she would call and say so, which is why her husband found it strange that she hadn't called him to tell him she would be late that day. John reportedly took a nap at some point during the day, and when he woke up at 5:30 that evening, Shari wasn't home. He became concerned. John called Shari's friend Mary to see if maybe she was with her, but Mary hadn't spoken to her all day. This was not normal, and her family and friends knew it immediately. Mary, Shari's daughter, and other family members jumped into action and started to look for her immediately. They started driving around to places she might be, and during the search, Mary found Shari's Toyota 4Runner parked at the Mervyn's department store at the Everett Mall, parked about 50 feet from the entrance. The car was locked, and Shari's cell phone and the gun she carried were both found in the car, but there were no Christmas presents in the car, and Shari was nowhere to be seen. It was at this time that Shari was reported missing to the Everett Police Department. Volunteers set out on a search of the area surrounding the mall, including nearby roadways, parks, and bodies of water, but there was no sign of Shari. Family and friends passed out missing persons flyers and continued to search for her, but no one had seen or heard from Shari since December 2nd of 2000. Those that knew Shari are certain that she would not have walked away from her life. There were no signs of her being depressed or unhappy in her marriage. She didn't have any debts or anything that might make her want to get away. So what happened to her? Some believe that she never made it to the mall at all and that her car was dumped there at a later time. Others believe she disappeared while she was at the mall. Of course, some were initially suspicious of John's story, but there was no evidence that he was involved in his wife's disappearance. John filed for divorce about a year after Shari's death, claiming that he needed to move on with his life. Shari has since been declared legally dead. However, her family and friends have not given up hope that she might still come home one day. Shari is described as 5'8" and weighing between 130 and 150 pounds. She had long brown hair. She was 50 years old at the time of her disappearance and has a tattoo on her left shoulder. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Shari Anderson, please contact the Everett Police Department at 425-257-8483. There's a $20,000 reward for information that leads to her return. Up next, we're discussing the 1999 disappearance of Teekah Lewis from Tacoma, Washington. Teekah was born on July 4th of 1996 to parents Teresa and Robert. Her father, Robert, was incarcerated at the time of her disappearance. Her mom, Teresa, had her hands full as a mom of 5 girls and didn't always have the opportunity to get out. But on January 23rd of 1999, her brother convinced her to spend some time with his family and some friends. They all went out to dinner and then headed to New Frontier Lanes, which was a local bowling alley. The bowling alley wasn't super busy at the time the family arrived, and as with a lot of bowling alleys, there was an arcade inside, located near an exit to the parking lot. The children in the group, including Teresa's 2-year-old daughter, Teekah, were drawn to the arcade, and they spent a good portion of the night in there playing the games and trying to win prizes. Teekah was most interested in a claw machine and a racing game where you drive a car around and inside the game, obviously, and race others on machines nearby. If you've ever been around a toddler, they, of course, can't reach the pedals, but they love to pretend to drive the cars. And that's what Teekah was doing in the arcade. As the night went on, more people began to file into the bowling alley, eager to experience the fun. The family members in the group took turns keeping an eye on the kids, including Teekah. Teekah was last seen by her mother, Teresa, around 10:15 p.m., playing on the race car game. She took her eyes off Teekah for what she says was 10 to 15 seconds, and during that time, Teekah disappeared. Immediately, the family began searching for Teekah. Teresa looked through the arcade and the bathroom, running into an off-duty police officer along the way. He, of course, jumped in to help searching for the missing girl, and they reported it to the bowling alley employees who made an announcement over the intercom. When there was still no sign of Teekah, the police were called and she was reported missing around 10:30 p.m. When Tacoma Police arrived on scene, they initially believed that the young girl simply wandered off. But as more details came to light, that quickly changed. Officers searched the bowling alley and the surrounding area and also stopped cars as they were leaving the bowling alley, checking trunks for any sign of the missing child. Other officers began to interview witnesses and try to get an idea of what went on that night. One witness claimed to have seen a maroon Pontiac Grand Am speeding out of the parking lot during the night Teekah disappeared, but the car has never been located. Another witness came forward saying that he had seen a man ushering a little girl similar to Teekah's description toward a bathroom in the bowling alley on the evening she went missing. The man was described as a white male in his 50s, about 5'10", with a pockmarked face. Police were joined in the search for the missing girl by the FBI and the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. A few days after the disappearance, a pile of men's clothes was found under a bush across from the bowling alley. The clothing included a navy blue wool pea coat with either IS or JS written on the back label, an off-white pair of Lee brand jeans, and a Columbia brand button-down plaid shirt. Police initially believed that this could be related to the disappearance of Teekah, but despite the extensive search, there was still no sign of her. In the days and weeks following Teekah's disappearance, information came out that could possibly lead police to a suspect. As it turned out, this wasn't the first time that a child had been targeted at the bowling alley. In November of 1998, just 2 months before Teekah's disappearance, a 4-year-old boy was sexually molested in a bathroom at New Frontier Lanes bowling alley. A witness described the man responsible as being 30 to 40 years old, having curly brown hair and a mustache or beard, having distinct pockmarks on his face, and was possibly wearing a hat with the word Husky on the front. 2 security guards apparently believed they'd seen him at the bowling alley before, but they didn't know his name. Just a few weeks later, a man with brown hair tried to lure a 6-year-old from the New Frontier lanes, and then earlier in the day, on January 23rd, 1999, the date of Teekah's disappearance, a white man with brown curly hair had attempted to abduct 2 young children from a park located less than a mile away from New Frontier Lanes bowling alley. The father of the children chased the man off, and he was seen driving away in a blue 1995 Pontiac Grand Am. The children's father didn't report the incident to the police until 3 days later, after he found out about Teekah's disappearance on the news. No arrests were made in any of these cases, and no sign of Teekah has ever been found. But her family remains hopeful that she might one day come home. She would be turning 28 this year, just in a couple weeks. At the time of her disappearance, Teekah was 3 feet tall, and she weighed about 35 pounds. Her hair was black with a silver streak along the right side. She had brown eyes, and she was wearing a green Tweety Bird t-shirt, white sweatpants, red, white, and black Air Jordan sneakers, red stud earrings, and she was carrying a clear purse with Starburst candy inside. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Teekah Lewis, please contact Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477 or the Tacoma Police Department at 253-798-4721. Up next, we're heading back to 1997 to discuss a case that, as per usual, I had never heard of, surrounding a man named Oleg Babichenko. Oleg was 28 years old at the time this case took place. He was a native of the Republic of Georgia, living in Vancouver, Washington at the time. Oleg worked at a local auto shop, and those who knew him described him as quiet and kind. He had a few minor brushes with the law, mainly for not showing up for traffic tickets, but he typically kept to himself, and that's why there was nothing that could have prepared anyone who knew Oleg for what would happen to him next. On the morning of October 31st, 1997, near the intersection of East 28th Street and Grand Boulevard, a 34-year-old man named Brian Bice was talking on the phone when he heard a loud boom. Brian saw debris coming from about a block away and immediately ran towards it. As he got to the scene, he found a Toyota station wagon on fire, and a man leaned over in the front seat. Brian noticed the fire surrounding the man's head and attempted to put it out with his hands. He was yelling for anyone to help him get the man out of the car, but no one would help him. After struggling to pull the man from the car, burning his hands in the process, Brian was finally able to free the man's head and torso. And at that point, onlookers helped him pull the man's feet from the car. The man was Oleg Babichenko, and he did not survive the explosion that destroyed his car. Brian Bice was taken by ambulance to Legacy Emmanuel Hospital and Medical Center in Portland to be treated for burns to his hands. He was praised for jumping into action to help Oleg, despite harming himself in the process. Authorities responded about 7:45 a.m. to a report of a blast. Agents from the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, who were called in to assist Vancouver Police, believed the explosion was caused by an unspecified device. They initially thought that the bomb was triggered when Oleg was starting the car, but they later discovered the keys to the car in Oleg's pants pocket, so that threw them for a loop. And there's not a lot of information after that. The investigation went essentially nowhere. The police didn't have very many leads to go on, and the case quickly went cold. And that's really it. This is why I do this podcast, though. Cases like this one, where people are maliciously killed for no apparent reason and no one is ever brought to justice. It's so unfair. So anything I can do to get the word out about cases like Oleg's and Shari's and Teekah's, I'm going to do it. If you have any information regarding the murder of Oleg Babichenko, please contact Vancouver Police, specifically Corporal Neil Martin, at 360-487-7423. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of The Haunted Corner. Let me know what state you'd like me to cover next in our Cold Case Corner. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. The sources for the episode will be listed on the blog post at thehauntedcorner.com, and it's also linked to in the show notes for you. Check out the other episodes of The Haunted Corner, available now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, with new episodes dropping every Monday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the podcast and would like to share your support and get access to bonus content, head on over to Patreon. You'll have access to the exclusive Patreon-only episodes, 2 bonus episodes a month, early and ad-free access to episodes, plus so much more. Head over to patreon.com/The Haunted Corner to join now. That is also linked to in the show notes. Follow us on social media at The Haunted Corner on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to tell a friend. And if you have a case suggestion or a correction to share, please send it to thehauntedcorner@gmail.com or submit it through the website. If you want access to all my recipes, our new food blog is out. It's called The Haunted Foodie. You can follow me on social media or check it out. It's thehauntedfoodie.com. Until next time, be kind and take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you soon. Bye.